The Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Deep right, we got tanks up there. Let's follow a range on deep right. I'm doing out right on the target right now. I've got a couple bees right in front of me. I'm going after it. Right, I got him.
Welcome back to the Lead Pursuit Podcast. It's bad enough you've had to endure listening to our opinion of Adepticon, and you know what a bunch of total asshats we are. But now I'm actually going to ask the historical coordinators what their opinions are. And I mean, I get it. We don't care what they think as long as they shit us tables, chairs, and a place to play our games. But you know what? I actually want to hear their opinions and how Adepticon 2025 went. First of all, we've got Mike Rafferty with us. Mike, how you doing tonight?
It's good. You know, at least you're honest with us.
I am. Well, I'm honest with you, but that guy that's also here, Don Ayers, yeah, I don't talk to that fucker.
Oh,
Don,
different.
how you doing tonight?
Fantastic. Always good to hear your insightful commentary on...
Insightful. Inciting commentary, not insightful. Well, no, it's good to have you guys on. And, first off, thanks for everything at Adepticon 2025. I know I always give you a lot of shit on the run-up, afterwards at the con, but that's because y'all are my good friends, and it was great. You know, we were talking before the podcast started. I don't know if I call it a 90%, 80%, depends how good of a mood I'm in, but overall, I really thought it went well, and so did the LPP team. But there's an element to where we want to hear it from you guys, because there's stuff that we missed, things we didn't see happening behind the scenes, or things that didn't affect us that drove you batty, that you're like, the next group of gamers that comes in here and does that, I'm taking your tables out back and burning them. So with that being said, Mike, what were your expectations going into Adepticon 2025 at the Baird Center, new city, new venue, totally different than Schaumburg?
So I expected a lot more problems on finding out where everything was. So I've been to the Baird Center once before last May, but I'd actually never even seen the historical site in person, just by picture, because we weren't allowed up there when we went the last time. And, trying to navigate where all the random loading docks and entrances are. I figured there'd be a lot more trouble of, I was really worried about random GM, not like you, but Bob, who's running a war game that's been out of print since the 70s. I figured he would show up and be like, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to be, and he wouldn't know who to contact. Right. That was my biggest concern going into it.
Well, what did you do to kind of mitigate some of that? Because I think there's generational differences, first of all, but I think the way that we communicate beforehand for conventions varies greatly. I mean, like I'll use the example of when I go to Historicon or when I do Fall In, it's very different depending on who the coordinator is. Some of them, some of the younger guys like Russ, I'm talking to them on Facebook or via email. Some of the older guys I know that have a job and busy schedules and stuff, I'll hear from infrequently and only on email, not on social media at all.
Sure.
What was kind of your plan to keep everyone linked up so that your expectation of a minor disaster didn't become a full-on gaming Titanic?
And I'm being a little unfair, but we all have that stereotype of who. And in my head, I was like, well, if I can make that guy happy, I can make everybody happy.
Right.
So, talking about generational differences, we have a Facebook group chat, which basically has all the TOs, all the organizers in. We don't have a CRM or anything for Adepticon.
Right.
Or some kind of ticketing system, and realistically be overcomplicated. But I want a group chat, so at the very least, if you post something in there, I'm seeing it, or Don, or Hazel, or Phil, or somebody with power will see this and help fix it.
When I'm screaming into the void about where are my velvet ropes, then Don's just there laughing as the
or we can
ropes
just
are showing
hit
up.
the ignore button.
Exactly. Ignore all.
But
Sorry,
that was one of it, because I wanted to have a good line of communication.
Yeah.
So I wanted people to know, here's how you get help. Okay, that was step one. Step two was, Don and I went up there on Sunday.
Right. I think that was
We were
your excuse to eat sausage and drink beer, but I'm gonna just mildly call it.
I had duck and brandy, but it was delicious.
Freaking high fancy people.
It was at a German restaurant, so it counts. Regardless, Monday we could kind of get in. Tuesday we could get in pretty much full bear. We basically just scouted out the venue.
Right.
I identified, like, okay, here's where the loading ramp is. That's why when you showed up, I was like, yeah, just go here, and we could take this elevator up.
Yep.
When Steve Fratt showed up, him and I kind of worked it out in real time, but we found a nice loading spot. I found a nice little back end elevator for him to use, and it was no problem.
Yep.
And some of that was just anticipating the needs and then trying to find the solutions before they arose. So,
well, and I have to tell this story because this is kind of funny. So,
yes.
And I was talking to the LPP guys before I hopped on here and relating some of the stories for guys that weren't there, like Casey and Matt. And I said, I roll up there and basically we unload everything. And I look at Chris and Connor and give them a knife hand and go, I don't care how this stuff gets to the historicals room. Just I'm going to go park the damn vehicle and you move it to the fucking historicals room now. And so I wasn't there for any of that move. So when I did the backload, I used a totally different elevator. And Connor's like, where was this elevator? I'm like, I don't know. I just walked around a corner and there was an elevator. So I took the elevator.
And that was the interesting part is we had the one we were using at first, and then it turns out there was a closer one. There was
one that I just randomly walked past, of all things, the booze cabinet to find. And I'm like, hey, there's a giant freight elevator and a smaller elevator there. But so that's one of those things you learn, your first year in a facility.
It's
going to happen,
Not surprising at all that you ducked out on the work.
I did totally. Like a standard Marine officer.
I do the same thing. It's really great.
Screw those enlisted guys. Move this shit. Of course, Chris was also an officer at the end. So, but Don, what were your expectations? What did you go in think that this whole event was going to be like?
I really didn't have many like big expectations. I knew that the facility and stuff would be great because Mike said he'd been there and he was just going on and on about how great the facility was. I thought that the drive there was going to be a lot worse. When they first announced it was going to Milwaukee, I was like, do I really want to keep doing this?
You were Mr. Grumpy Pants because I talked to you shortly after that.
I was looking at taking the train, going because I don't like driving through Chicago. So now I was going to have to drive through Chicago still and go an extra hour and a half north. I was looking at driving up into Michigan and taking that fucking ferry across the lake.
Talking about the ferry, and I'm like, are you making this tougher than it needs to be?
It goes right to Milwaukee, except it doesn't run that time of year. So
nice.
Shit, I like
it. Also was really expensive.
Yeah, it was pricey, but it might have been
expensive. Whatever. I'll stop asking dumb questions.
We were actually looking at about just what if we drove up there and took that over because it's about 2 hours quicker in terms of drive time, and then you get sent a ferry. It was $250 for the car, and then like $150 a person, and we're just like,
I'd have paid it. I don't give a shit. I'd have paid it. I'd have gone by hang glider if I had to. But
you hate Chicago traffic that bad.
Instead, you sat in the back seat of a luxury SUV.
Yeah. No bitch. No complaining.
With who? That's the most important.
With Sean, but
okay. But my expectations are similar to Mike's. Anytime you move, and we had the same thing when we first moved into the Hyatt in Schaumburg. It's a new venue, it's a new location, so everything that can go wrong probably is going to go wrong. So I was concerned about that. I was concerned that while everything is close and within walking distance, it was going to be now more difficult for people to get their the stuff for their events, and from their hotel to the Baird ballroom and stuff. So those were my big concerns. Other than that, I didn't really have any because, like I said, Mike had given glowing reports of the location and stuff. So I didn't have that many big problems.
Well, good. Well, continuing the negativity after talking to Don. No, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked, my team. What did you hate? What really chapped your ass? And you're like, never again are we going to do it this way, or never again are we going to sign up to do that thing. Mike, what pushed you over the edge so far that you're like, yeah, that was a terrible idea, and I'm going to find the guy that suggested it and throw him off the balcony.
So here's the problem. The person who suggested it's me.
True.
Throw yourself off that balcony.
And don't get me wrong. There were parts where I was like, it's not that far down. I like running big games.
Yep.
That is something I super enjoy. Part of the reason I like doing Adepticon stuff is I get to run big, crazy games. I don't mind paying up 300 some tanks for a giant game. I mean, you saw how many Flames of War tanks we had for our game.
Yes.
Okay. One.
Wait, we got to tell everyone what the game was because not everyone was there. So this is
it
what
was a big
me
Spring Awakening game set in 1945. We had piles of German tanks and Soviet ones and Hungarian ones.
He was Hungarian. I was very happy to see the Hungarians there. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well, Phil has a bunch of Hungarians, and I did too, and I used this excuse to paint them all. And they also have fun paint schemes. So
yeah.
And we had hidden tanks in some of the buildings, and whoever opened the building first got to have the hidden tank. That was actually our buddy Sean. I was
kind of disappointed. I was hoping you'd have something useful hidden there, like tickets to a local strip club or something. But apparently, it was only models.
The problem is you didn't go to Dick's like you were supposed to, and that's DIX.
Well, yeah. I guess I missed out on that ruling.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
But anyway, so part of the problem is like when you're running a giant game, you need to have a good amount of terrain. Like Flames needs line of sight blocking terrain to work.
Yep.
And we just had so much freaking terrain, and it was heavy. And before, I could just back my car up to the door and basically unload straight into a room. It took 5 minutes.
Yep.
This year, we had to move everything across a parking lot, a sky bridge, and a bunch of other stuff, and I was just like, the hell with it.
Yeah.
So two things I'm doing. One, I want to move more to like smaller scale stuff, not in terms of player count, but I look at how many people are able to play in our epic scale Civil War games.
Right.
We had the same amount of people, significantly less room in models, significantly less room in terrain.
Right.
Secondly, I'm also going to buy a bunch of those Husky boxes that you have because I do like those.
Those things are the gold standard. They are not cheap, but they stack.
Nope, they are $36 a piece at Home Depot.
Ooh, but like I said, they stack. They go through bumps and traffic and whatever, and they don't move in the back of your vehicle.
I can put them on a trolley.
Yeah.
Put a rope or something around them. Move a whole lot of them.
Yeah, they're weatherproof, so I can put them on my roof rack. So I can do all kinds of stuff with them that I wouldn't do if I just had some standard Walmart tote, which is how we used to take our stuff around. And while that's great because it's cheap, it just doesn't do what you need to do when you're moving a bunch of stuff up a bunch of flight of stairs or around on the elevators.
And I look at we've generally used the Costco, the black and yellow totes here.
Yeah.
And they're fine. It's also there's a whole thing where the packing needs to be a little bit better and more efficient, and we could get better at that. But sometimes that's just pre-con stuff.
There's a point pre-con you're just throwing shit in boxes. So,
correct.
Yeah.
So, and that's something where actually I'm going to go buy those totes this weekend. My buddy's coming to town. He gets a military discount. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's just the key.
Well, when you're spending $400 on, containers, 10% is kind of nice.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But I figured we can do that. Then when it gets nice out over the summer, have some time to pack all this up more intelligently.
Yep.
So that was a big thing of don't temper my expectations. Just try to find stuff that doesn't require 4 giant boxes of terrain.
Right. Yeah.
And absolutely. 10 or so boxes of models.
Well, Don, what did you hate besides being stuck right next to the lead pursuit guys?
Well, that was my favorite part of it, actually. Being able to just harangue you guys the whole time was like the highlight.
We're so sensitive. We don't like it. We can't take the harassment. Yeah. No, that was fun.
Pussies.
We are.
It's going to sound very self-serving, but I didn't really have anything that I absolutely hated. I can say that. There wasn't.
Yeah.
There were things that were surprising to me, like the cost of a Coke or a bottle of pop. But what's funny about that is it was like $5 or $6 for a bottle of pop. I didn't find the food prices, they were high, for what you would get at a McDonald's. I thought
food was somewhat reasonable for a convention, but getting anything to drink was
I'll pay $6 for a pretzel, and I don't feel too bad about that.
But the pop,
I feel worse. I'll pay $2 for cheese.
The drinks I thought were a little high, but then at the same time, I thought to myself, well, okay, if you don't want to fucking pay $6 for a Coke, you can walk outside and there's 20 restaurants or 20 places right across the street that will sell you the same thing.
What we did, we had those nice water bottles and just filled them up all weekend.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of the funniest things to me. That's not a standard convention thing for me to think about, because normally you don't have really fancy water dispensers. But this time I rolled in and I had my big freaking giant coffee cup, and I'm like, well, why don't I just go fill it with water instead of going 3 levels down, buying a soda, coming back up, which probably was better for me to hydrate myself. But I got to say this, and this comes from traveling all over the world. God, Milwaukee's got some shitty water.
Hey, when I was thirsty, I didn't care.
Exactly. It may not be Flint, Michigan, but it's not. It's
and I'm in the water business.
I work in Flint, Michigan occasionally.
Yeah.
And yes, I have never drank the water there.
I'm a water treatment operator, so I know water. But so yeah. But yeah, it was.
Well, then you know what it is when it's one of those points that you go drink some water and you're like, I am positive that this is in fact pure, but whatever the taste is, that did not get removed.
Pure ass,
Exactly.
To get back to it, the thing I'll echo what Mike said. We run these big games, and the problem I think this year was that there were issues that kept popping up, and so Mike would get called away, or he would need us to go and do something, and it a couple of times it got to the point where it was like, okay, look, either we run historicals or we run our games. You because you can't be both, because you can't be in 2 places at the same time. So
I got a dude to run my Sunday game for me.
Yeah,
which I was pretty happy about.
How he tricked him into that, I have no idea.
He's actually a really nice dude and loves Victory at Sea.
Well, there you go. Because, even at Leap Pursuit, we have the same question. There's times you say, do we want to run events, or do we want people to go, like Brett and Steve, go be able to play bolt action to their heart's content? So there's always that that balance between organizing an event, and especially something where you're the coordinators, versus having the freedom to kind of run and do what you want.
Well, us cutting back on it, I think will help. Will help out. You know what I mean?
Well, and the big thing is, like, on Saturday, our Antietam game went pretty smooth.
Yeah.
And I also think it helped that, like, to be frank, you knew the rules a lot better.
I did. That's true. I read them.
Compared to last year, when we also got lucky that there was a gentleman who could run the game for us when I was dying of food poisoning.
I read the rules. I read Blood Red Skies. And I got to tell you, I really enjoyed that Malta game. I know I was only useful for like the first turn and a half, and then they kind of took over it, but I had a blast.
You're going to laugh, because that's one of the biggest learning curves for people doing big Blood Red Skies events. And it's kind of why I said early on, I'm like, hey, as long as we get some experienced guys sign up, we're golden. Yeah. If we're all inexperienced players, then we're screwed.
Those guys took over, and Eric was like, that dude is the bomb, man.
Yep.
But you
get to the point where they're doing it all and they're leading their guys. And so in a sense, it's 2 guys fighting each other with a handful of minions, and you can just step back. Yeah. You don't have to be doing anything other than kind of advising or helping out.
That's what I thought. Doug makes such a big deal about this, how this is so difficult. And I was like, this is nothing.
Yeah. As Doug's running around going, Eric, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Eric, do you even know the rules? Oh.
That's the other part is when you don't know the rules, just sound confident.
Yeah, exactly. Confidently just make something up. Yes, that's a 4d6 roll. Don't you know that?
I just made shit up.
During our first Antietam game, they all had a 3+ morale save because I got the stat card mixed up. It was supposed to be a 4+.
Go with it, man. Whatever. Just go with it.
So we just ran with it. It was fine.
Yeah, exactly.
No. So
kind of segueing Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Don.
But no, I was just going to wrap that up and say there wasn't anything that I absolutely hated. It was minor things, you know.
Well, and so we'll segue right into that. So let's talk about the minorly irritating, and let me define that as things that just kept cropping up. You know, it's that bad penny that keeps showing up, or it's like being at the bar and Don keeps showing up. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know why I said that. But what were the things that you felt like you were playing whack-a-mole with that you're just like, are we going to suffer this every time in the Baird Center? Are we going to suffer this every time in Milwaukee, or being on the fourth floor for historicals? What were those things, Mike, that just were irritants that you wish you could have gotten rid of?
It would have been nice if we could have been in the front part where GW was and they were in the back. Now, I like the space. And I will say, I think by like day 2 and day 3, it was fine. People were figuring that out. And we're already talking about having some extra signage to direct people up to historicals. Since, as we discussed earlier, no one's going to look at the app.
Exactly. There's an app for that? Oh, yeah, there's an app for that.
But it's one of those, like, you know, to try to get people up there, you'll have some more signs and stuff. And I think that would help. Luckily, the Thunderhead Studio guys, they were doing Gale Force 9 related demos. They actually basically helpful. They literally just kept looking for problems to fix. They were really good dudes. Good, I'm happy they were there.
Yeah, I should have gone over and talked to him. I didn't. There's a lot of things I didn't make time to do, but I definitely should have done that.
Oh, and I would say if you want, the other minor complaint is that there's not just more hours in the day, so I can do more.
You know, Steve said it best. He's like, this is the most games that we've got in at any Adepticon that I've attended that are not games we're running, but I still want to do more. You know, and so it's just that frustration that there's.
I got to play Missile Threat. I got to play some Acton Panzer. Got to mess around with some other stuff. I'm like, I don't normally get to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's because you're making Don do all your work, so that was a good plan.
My passing the buck skill leveled up.
Exactly,
this year, so.
Amazing. Well, speaking of that, Don, was other than Mike passing the buck to you, what was minorly irritating that at least at your level kept cropping up?
I think. Luckily, I'm shielded from a lot of that stuff because I refuse to take any like real responsibility. Like I'm perfectly happy being a flunky. You know what I mean? Like if Mike tells me to go do
very
something,
well.
Some people are born to it, Doug. I'm perfectly happy if Mike tells me to go do something, I'll go do something. You know, I'm not going to say annoying because it was not annoying. It's kind of what our job is, that people did not, people would continue to ask for stuff that was like right in the app. You know what I mean? And I
might have done that.
It was hard not to get a little frustrated, you know, after the third or fourth person comes up and you're like, it's right here. It's in the app, but you know, they don't know. So it's not their fault. It's just, so you can't really get mad about it. That honestly, that was really, I didn't really notice any like recurring things or anything like that. We would have problems, but they all, to me, appeared to be different problems that had to be solved. And so
people kept asking for chairs.
Yeah. Chairs was a recurring thing, I guess.
I was about to say, if there was one recurring thing, is I always went around or sent my minions around stealing chairs. So and we talked about that beforehand. That's an easy fix for next year, you know.
Yeah. It wasn't a recurring thing, but the guys who set up our table, you know, after we had set up all the terrain for the freaking Flames of War, that giant Flames of War thing.
You got to set this right, Don. We saw that our table is in the air wall path. But we're like, oh, the guys that set up the air wall set these tables. They probably know better. It's fine.
Yeah,
they did know better.
They do not know better. And so after we'd set all that up, we come back the next morning and find that all that terrain, that huge city we had built, they had just like scooped it up in their giant stevedore hands and flabby arms and just smashed them together into a giant pile. Luckily, nothing was damaged. And you know, the tables were all apart and stuff. It was like, because they'd have to move it since they'd been I'm not going to say dumb because they might be able to track me down, but they couldn't see that these tables were right under this path that this giant air wall was going to have to go through. So
I mean, it took us about a half hour to fix everything, but also after that, it was fine. So.
Yeah, that's like I said. So there wasn't really anything I found was like recurring. It was just the typical stuff that you would figure that I foresaw as being, hey, these are going to be issues. But but they got solved. So
okay, well that's good. Then if you didn't have a ton of recurring issues on your level as the staffers, for us, I don't think there was anything recurring. We've talked about it, last episode, but I think one of the funniest things, and it's a victim of the Baird Center. There's no way you're going to do it. You will invariably schedule yourself for a game followed by a class or a different game that are on exact opposite ends of that frickin' facility.
Yeah.
It's like until you've walked it a few times, it's tricky to navigate.
It's tricky. And it's just that was the mild irritant for me, was that I would be knee deep in doing something up at the LPP area and go, oh shit, I haven't gone and got my medals for the next event. Oh fuck, that's down 2 floors and over across to the backside of the exhibitors area over by AMG streaming table, and I'm just like, okay, I've just lost half an hour making my way through the crowds to go pick up a series of medals. But I got it. Now I learned it, and I think both on my side and on like the Adepticon side, everyone learned that this isn't Schaumburg. We just rolled over to the GM station every 5 minutes and you're like, hey, have you unpacked the stuff for me yet?
Right.
You had to plan getting over there and getting your stuff. But anyway.
No, and I actually think that's probably one of the bigger things of, talk about lessons learned, is that sometimes just due to distance and everything, you do need to plan out your movement. Yeah. I would try to bring it back. Okay, I'm going to go grab lunch and I'll go hit the GM check-in to grab some medals and I'll hit the vendor hall. Just kind of do it all at once while I'm down there.
Yeah. Well, and there's times that I said, I'm going to go pick up my medals and go stop by the Longshanks booth, ask those guys a dumb question that I need tech support help with, things like that.
Which also, how great was that they had that booth set up all weekend?
It was good. And I didn't use them as much as I could have, or probably as I should have, just because of my own stupid schedule. But it was great to sit down and have a conversation, and not via email, and just kind of, game some stuff out, things you could do. Full disclosure, there's a lot of stuff we'd love to do in Longshanks for Blood Red Skies. Who knows if we'll get there, but it was great to just have time to sit down with them and talk through it and say, how do other game systems do it? How does Marvel Crisis Protocol do its list building? How can we integrate some of this in a way that's reasonable, but still gives us some of the data analytics and some of the long-term tracking that we care about, being able to know what people's lists were and stuff like that. What did really, or let me think of a good way to say it. Mike, what gave you a warm and fuzzy? I mean, so warm and so fuzzy that you almost peed your pants. What?
One time I just had to go to the bathroom. I kept getting interrupted. And
okay, well, yeah, it's like, stop asking questions or pee myself right here.
Because you know how it is. Sometimes you just get, but also talk about what's warm and fuzzy. I mean, just getting to see everybody and getting to see everyone have fun.
Yeah.
You get super frustrated, we're setting the game up, we're deploying the, 300 some tanks I thought it was a good idea to have in this game. I'm like, man, I'm never freaking doing this again. But everyone has fun, and you're like, I guess I could do this next year.
Yeah.
And
that
it
makes
feels
it
like
all
we had a
worthwhile.
lot of new gamers in our games.
I noticed that, and
awesome.
that's really good. We had several groups of new gamers, and even in our tournament, we had some new tournament players, and that's always good. We'll talk a little bit about numbers here at the end, because I think there's some insightful things there. But yeah, it was really good to have. While we missed some of our returning faces, it was good to have new people stepping in and playing games and doing things. So,
well, I'm hoping that a lot of the people that weren't able to come this year, will see that, hey, we didn't all get stabbed in Milwaukee. Most of us survived.
Most of us survived with our dignity intact.
Acceptable losses.
Yeah, exactly. We never saw Hazel again. No idea where he is.
Nobody we cared about.
Yeah. Exactly. That Steve Toth guy, no one likes him anyway. Well, Don, what made you all warm and fuzzy inside? Besides having a bar on the top floor for the first 2 days.
Oh, that was nice. I think it was that, I made a point, because it was the first year and there'd been so many concerns about the move and all that. I made a point of talking to as many people as I could, like in the elevators at the hotel and whenever we were out and talking to people that had been at the convention, what their experience was and what they thought and were they enjoying it and what were their issues. And without fail, they always had very positive things to say. So that made me feel good. That there's, because I thought there's still problems. There's always problems. At Schaumburg there was problems, even though we'd been there for years, but they weren't so massive that it was that big of a deal. I also liked seeing new people. I like seeing you guys, of course. Because you're the best target for your abuse, my circus act. Because you're like,
hey, these are my monkeys. Get your own damn circus.
Well, you're like, it's like going fishing for a fish that can't help but take the bait. So.
Says the man who sat there at the bar in Schaumburg and we tricked you into talking about Gettysburg for like 2 hours on your own and we didn't have to say a word.
Well, somebody had to try to help you poor bastards learn something useful.
Exactly.
The location was amazing. The amount of and variety of restaurants and eateries and entertainment and that sort of thing within 5 minutes walk is just fantastic. It can't be beat. It has everything over Schaumburg.
Yeah. Do you want Malort or cheese curds? I know which one I'm picking.
Cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
In all things. My wife
I've just started pooping normally, thank you, after 2 weeks of freaking getting rid of the cheese curds.
If I don't choose cheese curds, I'm getting murdered.
Yes.
So
I don't eat a cheese curd again for another year.
Yeah.
My body's perfect.
Yeah, that
was it. Seeing that everybody, seemed to be having a good time and the reports that I was getting from people that things were going well. That made me feel good.
Well, Don, building on what you were saying. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
I was going to say, I'll dovetail on that. And the thing that really made me happy, and I didn't talk about it last episode with the Lead Pursuit team, but I felt that it seemed to me Milwaukee area gamers really stepped up. In the things that I was used to seeing a Chicago face, there were Milwaukee people saying, absolutely, we'll run those events, or we'll, like guys that were local, offered to bring mats for me because we changed our entire format of the Blood Red Skies tournament, and they knew that I was short mats.
Rick and the Battle Badgers, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they're like, yeah, dude, we got you. We can easily cover down on that. So those things made me feel really good. And I didn't get a chance to talk about it last time because I just didn't think about it, that when you pull up stakes and you move, even though you're moving an hour and 15, whatever, from where you were, you are going to lose some percentage of your local people because it was so damn convenient for them.
Right.
And replacing that with the new local people is key.
Yeah.
No, I'd agree with that 100%. And, especially Rick and the Battle Badgers up in the historical area.
Yep.
They were very helpful. And it was good seeing them again. I haven't seen them since pre-COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was good to kind of change out some of the faces, but still have the great support.
Yeah. And then I'm very excited to see what next year's going to bring, because hopefully we'll get both sets of people be like, hey, this is good. I know it's a little bit of a drive. It's not that bad.
Right.
That's the other part, is that drive from Chicago to Milwaukee is very easy.
Yeah. We did it.
Except I made it at hour 11 of my drive. So
we did it a second time. We went down and picked up these German kids that flew in at
from War Scenery.
Yeah, from War Scenery.
Great conversation with them. We were discussing modern German politics. It was really fun. Next year, we're going to take them shooting. It'll be a good time.
Excellent. Excellent. Corrupt them early. Well, so Mike, what surprised you? What did you not see coming as the staff guy, and either was a good or bad holy shit moment?
Ooh, that's a good question. And, I thank you for asking that question. All the others that the politicians say while they're trying to think up an answer.
Yeah, well, they're trying to stall and think of something. You're like, I have no fucking idea how to
No,
answer
you
that
kind
one.
of stumped me a little there. And
you can punt it over to Don. You can say, Don, why don't you answer while I'm thinking?
No,
I can.
One, I've been there. I have walked it. Like I said, I was never in that space, but I was in a different one. But just like how much space we actually have, once you start putting the tables out and moving people through, like we had 1,000 people GW preview, and that area handled that no problem.
Yep.
Bits trading was kind of in a smaller area. We recognized it as like, okay, this is way more popular. We'll do it in a large area next year. Even still, after the first 5 minutes, you can walk through that no problem. So
I was surprised with that did not interfere more than it did, the bits trading.
No.
I really thought that was going to be an incoming disaster, but it wasn't.
Well, it's one we've learned from in the past when it was a lot more of a free-for-all.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get that good boundary between here's a tight ship, but we don't want to make this a crazy, heavily organized thing. So it was pretty much look, here's your deposit. Just make sure you clean up your area when you're done. You get your deposit back.
Yep.
Here's your tables. Don't be a game store.
Exactly. All right, Don, what surprised you? Besides how wonderfully arrayed everything for Elite Pursuit was and our amazing swag.
That was a
Your swag was really good this year.
The swag is always good. That's always the best part of it. Honestly, I
just more for the swag than the games. Let me be honest. I'm that guy. Sorry.
I just go there to rip you guys off.
Hey, I got a couple years of your fridge magnets on my fridge now.
Yeah, I do.
Christmas tree
I got one right here. This is the first part is gonna sound self-serving again. I was surprised by how smooth things went. Now, that doesn't mean that there were no issues. That of course there were. I'm sure that there were quite significant issues. But from my perspective as a flunky with no responsibility at all, they seemed to get handled pretty quickly, and to people's satisfaction. So that was a surprise to me. The other thing was just how amazing the Baird Center is, and how helpful their staff was to us.
Their staff was awesome, which really surprised me because I was not expecting that.
We were walking down. I think it was me and Hazel. I want to say we're walking down the hallway before the convention got started and everything was going, and I was saying to him, look at how wide this hallway, this passageway is. This is massive compared to what we've dealt with in the past. People aren't going to be clogging this area up, and you're going to be able to move through. And my experience, when I did get down in that area down near the vendor hall and stuff like that was, it did get blocked up a little bit right when they were going to open up the vendor hall,
right. Yeah.
But for the most part, traffic flowed pretty well. And it's an amazing facility. Got nothing but great things to say about them and their staff. So that was the surprise.
I think it was you that said it to me. I laughed at one point because being the typical Southerner, I'm like, oh, fuck, I'm going north of the Mason-Dixon line. I'm going to ask a question. They're going to look at me like I have a dick growing out of my forehead. I'm like, fuck, this is going to suck. Milwaukee's a super friendly town. Mm-hmm. Everyone, the freaking staff at the Baird, the wait staff out at the restaurants, everything. And someone's like, hey, dumbass, you're in the Midwest. You're not in the North. And I'm like, okay, you're right. I got to remind myself of that.
Well, so Chris Bergeron was telling me about how he was going to meet somebody, and I think it was Chris. Anyway, whoever it was said that they were supposed to meet. No, it's Mike Lewis was saying that he had to go meet somebody near the lockers, the pop-up lockers or, the temporary lockers. And he didn't know where it was. So he went and asked a security person, or not the security person, but the the staff that help
the
people
concierges.
out.
I don't know, the ones that were standing at the
whatever
top of the
they're called.
stairs.
I don't know. And she's like, well, you go here and you go here. And she goes, oh, never mind. Just follow me. I'll take you there. And so she walked from one building to the opposite end of the building. You know, that's kind of a hall, you know. And everybody was like that. And you contrast that with the two scumbags that me and Mike ran into at O'Hare Airport that were just assholes for no reason other than to be assholes. When we were trying to pick up those German kids, you know, it was, yeah.
So that summarizes exactly what I'm trying to say, guys. It's so funny because I mean, I've flown through Chicago O'Hare a bunch of times.
Yeah.
I've flown in there, I've transited through there, whatever, and I've been to Chicago before a bunch of times. And I Schaumburg was okay because it was out in the suburbs, but I just fucking hate Chicago. And Milwaukee is so different than that. And it was just great to be in a town that was welcoming. Yes, they had a little downtown bubble of all their primo stuff they'd set up, but it was nice. You know, are there things I wish that were different about Milwaukee? Absolutely. There's a lot of stuff that's inconvenient with the road systems or inconvenient with where I'll say services are, because like trying to drive around and find where you could mail,
trying to fly in there
is a
problem. I think.
Well, fly in there. So I told Steve, I'm like, fuck it, dude. Just next year, fly into Chicago. I'll come down and pick you up. We'll just build that into the time.
Here's another idea. I was talking to one of our staff guys. He lives in LA, and he flew, to O'Hare. Then like his puddle jumper got canceled. He took a bus. We started looking up Uber prices, and it was like $120 to Uber from O'Hare to the Baird Center.
Yep.
That's not bad. That's cheaper than another flight.
When you think about it. Well, and not that I'm telling y'all how to do business, but maybe on some of the arrival days, it's worth having an Adepticon bus for a fee that you say, hey, pre-schedule the Adepticon bus and throw your bag underneath and freaking fly into Chicago instead of doing the Milwaukee.
It's worth looking at.
It helps kind of bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah.
There, because it's easy. That is the one big thing is O'Hare is an incredibly easy airport to fly into.
Yes. It's a terrible airport to try to get out of. It's a great airport to get into.
Last year, so we do, AT&T does a tech conference in Schaumburg, actually at our old Hyatt place every year. And I volunteered to drop one of my buddies off at the airport because I was being nice. And that was the worst mistake I ever did.
Oh, yeah. Well,
super easy to drop them off, stuck in traffic for an hour and a half afterwards.
Well, and I tell the story that dropping off is its own nightmare. Dropping a rental car there is fucking 7 planes of hell, because you have to go to the furthest point to drop your rental car on the train and then come back and drop your bags. And
So I got lucky. When I was at Logan, there was a bus station like right there, so I could just drop that off, hit the bus, terminal, done.
Yeah, exactly. I'm used to San Diego. I'm spoiled by San Diego and LAX, where I fly in there, I freaking drop the rental car at some random facility, they bus me to the airport, and I walk right over to my counter and drop my bag off. Or stand in line, as it usually is with Delta. Stand in line for an hour waiting to drop my bag off, but whatever. Okay, well, hey, let's move on to a couple other the really staff-specific things.
Sure.
Mike, we talked about things that irritated you, things that were good, bad, otherwise. What do you know that you're going to change going forward? What if you had to pick one thing to anchor on? What's going to be that big change for the Adepticon Historicals?
So I've had some suggestions about doing like an info desk or a staff desk, and we actually talked about doing that this year, just because at the end of the day, we're usually hanging out up there most of the day.
Yeah, when I needed you, you were always hanging out, jaw-jacking at the front of the room. But yes,
of course. So it's the why not have a labeled desk where it's like, hey, if the staff shirts weren't a giveaway, there's also a staff sign, and then you can come ask questions.
I just looked for staff shirts, but that's me.
Yeah. So I think we're going to go ahead and do that next year. I've been talking to some of the other guys. We might have some printed out floor layouts, or maybe like a diagram that we can like put up on that day.
Right.
But personally, I think would be better is for the tables themselves if they just had like a number or something. So I could be like, oh, hey, you're here to play Blood Red Skies. That's table 50, which is over there. I could just point off in the distance.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a fine line, because we talked about this before the show. There's a fine line, like you said earlier, about between being super disciplined and super rigid and regimented, and being flexible enough that you can move your tables, you can reconfigure the room. But there's always the question I have, because I think, as we alluded to, sometimes there's a generational gap. It's the question of, what if you had an info desk, what would you do with it? And I think that's really the big question on our end is, okay, that's cool. That's going to help a number of people, but what are the really cool things we could do with an info desk? What is there checking in for GMs? Is there a way to facilitate, where their gear is stowed, where, we laugh because, you were part of the death march to get stuff up to the fourth floor. Is there a way that guys can go drop stuff off on the ramp, having a preloaded day, whatever, and then they meet their stuff upstairs, things like that, where really the info desk can provide services to
and
the
that's
GMs
just stuff that
who are running
we
ragged,
need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's well, it's like, I'm not expecting this to be like, a fully staffed 24/7 info desk. It's more of a, okay, if we're going to be in the room hanging out, let us hang out at the staff table so people know where to find us.
Exactly.
Now, will the staff table just be next to you guys so I can harass you the whole time? Yeah, but, added benefits.
No, you cannot hide behind the Blood Red Skies banner. That's for the streaming table. You can't hide back there. Okay,
but I think
Don,
I'm trying to meet requirements. Basically, what I want to do and what people are suggesting, try to meet halfway here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, anyway, Don, what do you
flunky
got?
number one. What are you going to change besides your
number one
piss poor attitude?
The beauty of my position that I've carefully crafted is that I don't have to think about these kind of things. You know what I mean? Like I might bring issues and weighty
concepts.
I just do what I'm told. I am skeptical of the idea of a info desk, because the question becomes, how do you staff it? Because if you tell me that I've got to sit for 4 hours at an info desk, that's not happening.
That's the John Cleese skit about arguments and insults.
Yeah, no,
that's exactly what it is.
Don, here's what it would be. It would just be like when we're just sitting around John and stuff. Cool, we can do it there. Other than that, it would just have like, hey, here's a little sign that says, if you have questions about where stuff is, here's Mike's phone number. Just call him.
Exactly.
See,
here's a map of the hall.
In my head, it's somebody coming up and asking me a question and me screaming right into their face, why don't you look at the app?
Well, we're going to pick people with a customer service attitude there, Mr. Grumpy Pants.
That's not me. That's not me.
It's not you. Hey, I got a suggestion. I know what you could change, Don, for next year. Not bring fucking beach carts. Sorry.
To be fair, the gray one actually worked out really well. Was tough. The green one, which is my favorite because it's green,
I'm sorry.
That one was a little less sturdy.
What carts did you bring?
What you mean the pallet jack we just stole? We didn't bring carts because we were going to steal it.
What did you bring to haul your
in true marine fashion?
So here's
something.
the best part. So this is where I have to share the hilarious part. So only my vehicle went over in that initial offload. We get back. I think it was later that evening. Chris and I go down. He's like, yeah, I got some stuff that I need to take over for the class. He opens the back of his Ridgeline, and what is there? A folding fucking hand truck. And I look at my teammate and go, where were you, asshole?
Yeah. Like, we're doing you a favor, and in your typical ungrateful manner.
Oh, I'm ungrateful. I'm an ungrateful bastard because I want more.
You are.
No, it was that there were many funny moments throughout the whole weekend, but I think that one, when I looked at you sitting there with a beach cart, Don, and I just was like, oh, this is not going to go well. I'm going to put 2 cases on this beach cart and it's just going to crumble.
Those things also held up too. Like we put a ton of crap in those.
I would have been happy to watch you load down Connor like a fucking Sherpa and make him haul that shit up there.
It's a different generation. There's some funny generational differences where you tell someone that they're the intern and they're their way of doing things is different than maybe our generation would have handled being the intern. So there's a few things where I had to knife hand Connor and say, no, this is what we need done.
I'm honestly shocked that you have interns. Who would willingly do that?
I joke about he's happy to come along for the ride and help out and
that's the problem with today's
do whatever
youth.
he can.
Also, Phil got me knife handing stuff now, and it's actually a very efficient way of pointing.
It is a very efficient way of pointing and directing people, and sometimes intimidating.
Honestly, we could use a dolly or something like that, for our own personal use.
Yeah. And
you can charge Leap Pursuit for it by trip.
I cheaped out a little bit because I want to say the gray cart was like $100, and I bought a cheap dolly for $30. Next year, I'll just buy a nice dolly and call it a day.
The thing is, if we switch over to those containers like you use, they will. Mm-hmm. They could stand up to being put on a dolly, stacked up and thrown on a dolly, and you can get dollies pretty cheap. So there some changes.
I started looking at.
Yeah, also at Home Depot, where you buy the Husky things, you can buy Milwaukee folding dollies.
Yeah,
I seriously looked at Milwaukee Pack Out first to store all the stuff.
Pack Out is cool, but it's crazy expensive.
Well, my buddy has a bunch. I was willing to cut me a decent deal on it, but I was like, even at the decent deal.
Yeah, it's not worth it in the end because I use that up at my farm.
Yeah.
For like a two or I don't know what to call it, component wall inside. Sure. The barn shed where I put all my tractor parts. So when you've got 10,000 little pins and bolts and nuts and things that are, endemic to running a tractor on a farm, I could do it like my dad and his buddies did and throw it all in one bucket. And I've spent let me see here. Let me get this right. In the 12, 17 years since my dad's passing, I still have not sorted all those fucking bolts and toggle bolts and everything else.
Well, Petco's got some really cool stuff for that.
At your little boutique farm?
Yes, at my boutique. What do they call it? Oh, a hobby farm is the insult they call it. Mine ain't no hobby farm.
Yeah, it's not a plantation.
My wife's got a hobby farm,
definitely not a plantation.
My wife's got a hobby farm. We just call it a garden.
Yeah, I would call it a hobby farm if I let my sister-in-law put livestock out there, but because I do nothing but have people cut mixed grass hay from it, it's not even a hobby farm.
Yeah.
It's a hole in the ground that I throw money into, I think, but it's a lot of fun.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff that went on historical game-wise.
Yeah.
But what were the gaps? Mike, if you had to say, here's one game system or one era or something I wish a team, a group, a podcast would step up and run, what would that be? Where was your unfilled gap?
So real quick before I answer that, I think one of the biggest lessons learned and advice we could give anybody, especially with the Baird Center compared to the previous venue, make sure your stuff is packed efficiently in ways that transport easily. I think can summarize our last 10 minutes of discussion.
Pretty much.
Good packing will pay off so much at this venue.
Yes, it will.
As to gaps, World War II, we had a lockdown. We had naval games. We had air combat. Every facet of World War II except the Nazis on the moon were dealt with.
Exactly.
Modern-wise, it's okay. There's not a lot of great modern, and also bolt action. I can't forget them. There's not a lot of great modern rule sets, and then also it gets some people don't necessarily like playing games of stuff that happened recently.
Yeah,
I know some guys that won't play Vietnam games because they remember it. Yeah, I get that. I think our biggest gap, because Saga had the ancients and medieval stuff on lockdown. Yep. We had the nice Age of Pirates. But realistically, for the Black Powder era, which I'm saying 1700 to before World War I, we had our Civil War game and Steve Fratt's game. And then actually, I'm sorry, there were a couple Lord America skirmish games.
Right.
But if you think of in your head, when you think Grognard historical, it's Napoleonics.
Right.
And we had an epic Napoleonic game. Steve Fratt ran that gigantic double-blind Waterloo that was beautiful.
David too, the ESR stuff.
And David was writing his demos, but that was it.
Yeah.
So it's one of those I would personally love to see a little bit more of. I like Black Powder as a rule set. I know Dom will disagree with me there, but I like those style of rules, and I would like to see
it's a
more
con.
of that.
I think it's straightforward enough. It fits a con. It may not be as crunchy or as much of a simulation as some people want, but
I can explain it to you in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
And if you've played a game ever, you already know how to play.
Right. Terrible.
Right.
I know.
Okay, Don.
When Musket Don comes out, side note, Don is also saying he's making a World War II rule set. It's called Don Werfer.
The Don Werfer. We're launching the Don Werfer.
I'll send you the cover art later.
I don't know that I want to see that. That's disturbing.
It's
all right, Don.
I'm really good at Photoshop.
What gap did you think needed to be filled in a historical era or genre?
I think it's a hard
really
question to answer because it's the answer is going to be selfish. You know what I mean? Because people run the games they want and people play it. I agree with Mike. I think that the black powder era was pretty light on that. And the modern too. It's anything but World War II is.
I think modern is the gap for me. I mean, and I'll 100% admit it's because I couldn't give two fucks about the black powder era, but that's fair. Where I am historically. But I would agree with you that there were not as many players at those games as at Ancients and World War II.
Right.
You know what? I think your missile threat game and John Russell's Korea game are the only two post-World War II games that were played.
I think so. And here's the funny thing for me looking at an event like Historicon or Fall In, where there's a lot of even one-off stuff where they're not playing Harpoon, but they're playing a modern naval rule set that somebody made up or found, on the bottom of the internet. There's more moderns at events like that. And I think that's good and it's bad. I think you guys know me. I'm a big proponent of simple rule sets.
Sure.
It seems like every fucking modern rule set has to be complex.
It's complex.
And I think that doesn't fit the crowd at
Modern War is
Adepticon.
complex. It's got to be somewhat. I'm sorry.
Putting a bunch of dudes in a phalanx was also complex.
Maybe you should just stick to chess. That's simple.
I think checkers is about the limit of my skill.
I think it's
Doug. You're right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Don.
I think too that it's cyclical. You know what I mean? Like this year, people didn't run as many black powder games. Next year, we could have a glut of black powder games and fewer, World War II. We're always going to have black powder, or not black powder. We're always going to have bolt action. We're always going to have some, Flames of War, Team Yankee, because those are the tournament games and those are popular. But everything else is sort of like up for grabs. Whatever somebody feels like running. How many different games have we run, Mike? We've run. Chinese Farm. We've run Flames of War.
We've run Arab-Israeli Wars. We've run Team Yankee Cold War. Flames of War.
Yeah.
And actually, just think about it. In the Lard America group, Mike was running Seminole Wars, and looked really cool. And he's been doing Mexican American War for years.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with you, Doug. I think a lot of modern rule sets, actually, there isn't a modern in terms of gaming terms, modern rule set. They were all
closest thing you get is Team Yankee, and that's Flames with more tanks.
And I will defend Team Yankee. It's fine for what it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's
true.
I hate it because I hate the look of it, and I think that's it's. If you say it's just Flames of War with modern weaponry. Yeah, I get it. I just hate the look of it, And
the visuals of it annoy me. It's a lot of times when we do our large games, I try to spread the table out so far. Yeah. But I've also enjoyed, I've went to a couple Team Yankee events locally, and I've had a lot of fun playing in those tournaments.
Yeah.
So I like the game itself, even if I could look at these visuals are kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And part of that, because we're talking about modern rule sets, I want a modern naval rule set that I can play without going insane.
Yeah. My problem is I remember as a young whippersnapper at the United States Naval Academy playing NavTag, the computerized Harpoon, that they had for all of us to train on. And
Sure.
even that was freaking complex because it was supposed to be somewhat of a simulation, but at least it was automated. So it wasn't like you were playing Harpoon, looking at all the tables and rolling the dice and cross-referencing. So there's a level of when we move out of the video game and automated way, we've got to simplify some of the lookup tables that nobody seems to have. At least I haven't seen a rule set do. There probably is one. I just haven't seen
wait until you try Aegis, Don.
So there's a new C-Power computer game, and I keep watching videos on it because I want to play it.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time right now to learn it, so I'm like, I'll just wait till I do, and I'll pick it up. But I watch the videos every night, like, around midnight when I'm going to bed, and I'll start texting these guys ideas for naval rules.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
He wakes me up.
So I got about 30% of a naval rule, so it's just basically just Victory at Sea reskin to have some modern stuff.
Yeah, Victory at Sea with surface-to-surface missiles. No, that's once again, we are in a good time for Adepticon and a good time for miniature tabletop wargaming, regardless of all the discussion about where board gaming and gaming is going with tariffs and all that stuff. We have definitely had a renaissance for probably the last 10, 15 years in all of this gaming. So when I bitch about not having a very narrow, set of time and an easy to play rule set, if that's our only failing, then okay, that we've got.
Well, I mean, we're not talking about how can we get people to attend, or that's
exactly.
I don't know, what were we missing? How can we get what we're missing? Like we're having the good conversations you want to have.
Exactly. Not the how do we keep the con alive and how do we keep historicals going, which other people have had those conversations. Okay. The last thing I kind of want to throw y'all's way because we've been talking for quite a while. What felt different this year? Obviously, it's a new venue, new city. There's always going to be a little bit of a new vibe to it. What was the biggest thing that you walked away going, man, this for good or for ill doesn't feel like the Adepticon that we've had for the last several years?
On a lot of levels, it just felt different. The Hyatt was very comfortable.
Yeah.
I knew the in and out. My room was right there next to the hall, which was really nice. But it's like I knew that building very well. I knew how to get everywhere. I knew who to call when there was something going on. We had been in the Schaumburg for a decade.
Yeah.
So it's what was different is just, hey, I'm a little uncomfortable just because this is a whole new space. These are new people I got to build relationships with. I keep trying to park in bike lanes or in areas where I'm not supposed to.
I just pulled up in a no parking zone. I'm like, I can stand here. We can stop, right? We're not parked.
I drove up the exit ramp for the loading dock.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
It's a lot of those little things. It's like, hey, the only way to figure this out is just to go and do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Don, what felt different this year?
I think it's a little different for me because I've only been to 4 Adepticons, Mike? I think it's 4.
Yeah, you went to one before COVID,
and then
one post COVID.
One, one right before COVID, and then all the ones since. And so I didn't have all that. I'll say baggage. It's not baggage, but that.
No, it is baggage. It's emotional baggage.
I was just very surprised. I think it was surprised that everything was going so well. Surprised that there were the issues that everybody, on Facebook, of course, in some of the groups, people are complaining about
social media.
Things. Yeah, people are complaining about things, and they complain because they're concerned. So they're not wrong. So many of those things were not the huge crises, whatever the fucking word is.
Yeah. Crises, you illiterate fuck.
That everyone thought they would be. Okay, parking is going to cost money. That's just the way it is. But
there was tons of parking.
There was a lot of parking.
I laughed about that. There was a shit ton of parking. Thankfully, I didn't pay for main event parking. I almost did one day, but yeah.
The security.
I paid $350, I think, for parking throughout the whole weekend.
Yeah.
But also I had a valet that got my car when it was summoned. That was kind of awesome.
We almost laughed about that as soon as we pulled up to the hotel over to the St. Kate. Connor and I looked at each other and were like, should we do valet for the entire week? I'm like, fuck no. I'm already paying enough money.
You can't live with yourself with that. No,
Yeah,
but like the
exactly.
security, everybody was very concerned about it, and
Yep.
because they were going to be checking bags. And my God, it's going to take me forever to get there, and it just didn't pan out that way.
They were super professional at the security.
Yeah, I think I would like.
I was really happy.
On like our Skyway, there was only usually 2 people at the door. I would probably like to see one additional person there as an extra person to be able to go through the bags. But I myself never saw any problems. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. That just means that I didn't see it. But we were getting reports that there was a huge backlog, and my God, everybody's back all the way across the Skyway into the Hyatt. And I went down there almost immediately, and there was no backlog at all. I walked right through the gate.
I think the Skyways were probably the least staffed.
Yeah.
Because everyone assumed, right or wrong, everyone assumed people were going to be coming in the doors, because we had, do quick math here, 8-10 people down at the 2 lanes.
It was a space issue on the Skyway because they wanted the screening inside the Skyway.
Yep.
There's only room for 1 set metal detectors there.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, and we just breezed through down at the north door.
The security wasn't,
even when there was a line. So there's sometimes I showed up and there was a line out the door, but it went through in about 2 minutes.
Well,
I mean,
I think I waited in line less than 5 minutes the whole week combined in security.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the food.
Absolutely. I was very impressed with the security.
Food concerns were not. They didn't really bear out those concerns. People were like, "Oh, are we going to be able to get food, or is it going to be so expensive?" It was a little bit pricey, but it wasn't like crazy.
I wish someone had done the analysis. I think I spent less on con food and ate in the convention more than I did in Schaumburg. And that's also not fair, because over at the Hyatt, we would go grab and go stuff from the restaurant, and that was always more expensive. But just thinking back, I was like, I don't think I spend as much. And ironically, the one complaint that I keep coming back to, what I did spend less this year than previous years where I've either played in the Heresy Room or had or been there at the Hyatt for later afternoon and evening events. I spent less on booze.
Yeah.
Because I had to go walk and find it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like
the first 2 nights we had that bar, but
the breakfast was cheaper. You paid $21 at the Hyatt in Schaumburg, and it was like $18 at the Hyatt.
So that was the first discussion Jeremy and I had, and it was hilarious. We're like, wait, this breakfast over at the St. Kate is cheaper than the buffet in Schaumburg was, and it was ordering from a menu. So it was, I'll take the Denver omelet, or I'll have the 2 eggs over medium with toast.
That's kind of nice.
And it was so my takeaway was, hey, I'm happier to sit here at the St. Kate in a really nice restaurant and have a really good omelet and potatoes and plenty of coffee to get me started for the day, instead of going through a breakfast buffet and getting powdered eggs and whatever else we got.
I will say St. Kate's bar was amazing.
Yeah.
I know, and I get so much shit from the guys because I only anchored there one night, I think. And there was even one night where they were there. Brett and Steve had just come back from going out for Mexican on Saturday night and didn't even see them, went right up to the room and went right to bed.
Because we went to the bar at the Hyatt a couple times, and, I would say I spent about $30 each time on food, but I also got a burger, fries, and then a whole order of cheese curds. Because Wisconsin.
Stuff. And the best mojito.
They were really good food.
Yeah.
Best mojito I've ever had.
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
I now love Navy grog. You have that at St. Kate's.
That was delicious.
That was good sitting there on the last night with all of us kind of debriefing, BSing for a while. Yeah. I liked the St. Kate. It breaks my heart a little bit that we probably won't be there next year. We'll probably be over in the Hilton, but at least I won't have to put my cabin boy in the closet like Honor was.
I don't know.
The entry
I'll
was.
say my bar tab was under $100 for that night, and I had
We
two or
had a
three.
lot that night. Yeah.
Well, because I had 2 or 3, and then I bought you guys around. So,
Yeah.
but I was pleasantly surprised at how low my bar tab was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That was
really
a
like
nice
the
bar.
St. Kate.
I really enjoyed it. And I really like the Spy Bar. That was
Spy Bar was fun. I wish we'd had more time to kind of goof
We
around
learned
that.
we just go there, not Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Go there, we have time to check it out.
So
yeah, I think overall there were a lot of things that were rubs that were difficult. There were a lot of things that are going to be done better next year. And once again, Chris even talked about like some of the snafus with airbrush and stuff like that. Those are just first year new event growing pains.
Yeah.
But what made me happiest was I never felt like the Adepticon staff didn't care about an issue. I never felt like people were just saying, we'll just accept it. We'll just drive on and we'll get through this year. I felt like everybody, no matter who you were talking to, if you said, hey, what about, they're like, oh yeah, we can solve that. Or, oh no, we can't solve that. But what we can do is X. So that really made me really happy to do all that.
I have always said that
guys.
One of the things I wanted to do with our podcast, the worst historical podcast ever, is the first year I went to
listeners, Steve and I.
I would say 100% of the audience is on this podcast right now. So.
Sorry about that.
The first year that I went to a Adepticon to help out as a volunteer, I remember sitting and talking to Greg Sparks, and he asked me what I thought of it, and I said I wish that people who attend the convention could see some of the things that go on behind the scenes so that they can enjoy the convention. And I've talked to Mike, we both talked a lot about having some of the guys on like Greg or Dustin, who runs the vendor hall and stuff, and just talk about the things, the challenges that they have and the issues that come up, so that people would get a good idea of everything that goes into that, so that they can have a pleasant and enjoyable time.
There's a level of, until you see behind the curtain, you have no fucking idea. And I even got a little cross with my own team, because us, we're quick to bitch, we're quick to be smart asses. We may have gotten in trouble, and I don't think Dustin will ever forgive me for that. But we may have crossed some lines before. But the fact of the matter is, when you see behind the curtain and you see the level of effort that goes in, sometimes you hear, like I even heard my own team bitch about stuff, and I'm like, hey, motherfucker, we even talked about that in the staff meeting. This is something different. There's something that's come up. This is not that it wasn't planned. Holy shit, someone threw a wrench into the system on this.
Yeah.
And I think like one of my joking comments when we were trying to figure out the whole loading day, that was nothing that was Adepticon's fault. That was literally, or say the unloading day, that was literally the lady at the top of the ramp and the dude at the bottom of the ramp not asking each other, what kind of a vehicle is it? Do you have a spot for an SUV? Or, oh, that's a small truck with a trailer. Yeah, they don't need a full bay. Can they pull up on the ramp? And that level of discussion wasn't happening, but those weren't Adepticon staffers. That was the building security team, who was doing a good job. But could they have got people in and out faster and optimized their space? Oh, hell yeah. But once again, was it that bad? Yeah, not really.
Yeah.
There's some grognard little bitch. Fucking grognards. Stuff and cuff those guys. Put a bag over their head.
I'm actually wearing the Grognard rendition team T-shirt right now.
Shameless plug. Those are available on the Lead Pursuit site in the store.
Shameless plug.
If they were cotton,
shameless plug.
I'd buy more.
Support our drinking habits.
Yeah, exactly. That is totally what it is. Support our drinking habits. Buy some T-shirts.
But and that's the thing. Like, even the feedback I'm getting when people are like, "Yeah, I saw this," it's still very positive feedback. Like, everyone's happy. It's just like, oh, well, maybe this could be a little bit better, or this could be good. But no one has been doom and gloom or really complaining, or at least that I have seen. Yeah, I'm not going to say there's not
no,
some corner of the internet
no
where someone
one's
is.
listening to the people that are being doom and gloom, because if you went, you saw that it wasn't doom and gloom. Am I going to bitch about the first time I went to one of the vending machines? I got a lukewarm Pepsi. I could, or I could just go, I don't fucking care.
Or you could not be
if that's the worst of my problems, you know.
It's like, yes, I probably drops $50 and 20-ounce pops over the weekend. Sure.
Damn, you bought a lot of pop.
I bought a lot of pop. Well, because there's a lot of times like, hey, you guys want drinks? And it's like, all right, well, shit, I'm grabbing like 3 of them.
Yeah.
Well, you
But
know, it would have been
actually,
easier if we
overall,
had a bar outside of our venue.
So I asked about that because I was like, this is really cool. It's like $2,000 a day for it to be up and running. That the con has to pay. Which I don't understand because
fucking collection. Do I have to think of everything around here, Mr. Rafferty?
Yeah. But it's one of those I think it actually could do pretty good up there. I mean, every time it was open, I bought stuff.
I did.
Yeah, and I say this not joking. I'm glad it wasn't open the later days, because those are days that everybody's like, hey, do you want a beer? And my first impulse was fuck yeah. And then I'm like, no, I still got like 3 hours of events I got to run. I do not want a beer right about now.
Well, and that bar actually had pretty reasonable prices too.
Yeah, they weren't bad at all.
Like, I'll pay $11 for a mixed drink, and I'm not going to complain.
That Spotted Cow was cheaper there than some of the places out in town. So.
That content creator thing was great because of that bar. You know?
Yeah.
How else can we tolerate?
That was a really cool event.
Yeah, we're going next year.
So, well, okay, so let's anchor on that, because we didn't really talk a whole lot about that and people's perspectives. What'd you guys think about it?
About
honestly,
the content creator?
Yeah. What did you think going in versus what actually happened there?
I thought it was going to be.
I had no idea what it was going to be like.
Initially, it was just going to be a very large.
I thought it was going to be a bunch of.
There's a term I want to use that I can't use right now, but
dickheads.
I'm going to say I thought it was going to be a big circle jerk.
I thought.
Yeah, pretentious dickheads all fluffing each other and saying how great they were.
Oh, I've got a YouTube channel with 10 grand, 10,000 followers. Whoa.
That's just what I thought it was going to be. Was not that at all.
Nobody asked, how many subscribers do you have? Nobody asked, how many people listen to your podcast? Not a single fucking person. And I talked to people from, Uncle Adam all the way down to random dude who has 7 followers because he just wants to talk about war games.
Yeah, Hazel found a Star Wars Armada YouTuber that he's been following for years. I was sitting behind him in line for a beer.
I was thrilled to talk to that dude. I've been subscribed to him for years, and he was a great, just a genuine dude. Didn't put on airs like like some guys might put on a fucking flight suit or some shit like that. He was a genuine
dude. Might dress up.
Great to just talk to.
Cosplay asshole.
Yeah. He was a good dude.
And it was acceptable because you had the 40K stuff on it.
I did.
Oh my God.
State. I think that was a great event. Did I meet and get to talk to everybody? No. Was there a little bit of being the small fish in a big pond? Hell yeah. Because everyone's like, Lead Pursuit never fucking heard of you. But I think it was a really good event, and more importantly, I got to talk to people that made connections and things that are going to carry the podcast to talk about other topics and other cool stuff. So that's why you do it.
I was super happy with what I saw at the event, and I hope it's back next year.
Just
won't be, but
wait till Nerds of War is there, then you can look down on us.
I'd be like, you know what? We have 3 more listeners than those guys. So.
Yeah.
Guys, I really appreciate you being on the podcast tonight. It's always good to talk to you. It was great to hang out with y'all at Adepticon and give Don a ration of shit. And I'm going to say it here. Don, thanks for running the multi-game.
I enjoyed the shit out of that, Doug. I really did.
We were laughing about that because, like we said beforehand, thank God people freaking help you and take the ball and run, because at some point it's going to degenerate into everybody for themselves.
Well, I liked it because I spent that enormous fortune on that goddamn mat.
I gave you a discount, bitch.
Honestly, that's a pretty fair price for a 4x8.
It was. It's worth every penny. Worth every penny.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because that's been a big project for Brett and Steve and I from the beginning. And Brett was the guy that kind of honchoed the whole plan. So
maybe
I told Don that mysteriously every air game that we play going forward is going to be over something that looks suspiciously like Malta.
Exactly.
Maybe next year I'll run some Beyond Mid-Galley.
Yeah, fuck yeah. Well, now that you got a bunch of jets,
Yeah.
So
All of them.
Oh, Phil did ask you where's his Mirages.
And my B-58
Son of
Hustler.
I think I could sucker Steve into the B-58 Hustler. I got to get him to do the Mirages first. But shit, if we've done the XB-70, that's bigger than a B-58.
Wait.
No.
You guys are going to do the XB-70?
Oh, he's modeled the XB-70. I don't know how the fuck you print one at 1/200 scale.
I don't know, but there were two of them made, but it would have been like the coolest bomber ever.
Yeah.
And it's why I curse McNamara nightly before going to bed. But
So
you can believe that too. I will happily take one of those and print it in beautiful sack anti-flash white.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that'll be cool. But anyway, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. It's great to chat with you all. Great to talk about Adepticon. Look forward to hopefully seeing you all at an event this, south of the Mason-Dixon line, if we can drag you down here.
I think NashCon is probably out because Don has to work that weekend, but I think Fallen's a good possibility. Yeah. And if you guys do something at that PAX River, which I'd never heard of before you guys talk about that, but I'd also love to see Mitch, so that would be phenomenal. Maryland, I think, is south of the Mason-Dixon. So
why don't you just invite us down to your farm? Why don't you?
Because we have standards on my farm.
To your hobby farm for a gaming weekend. And if
I had room there, I would. So Chris gives me so much shit. He's like, why don't you build a battle barn? I'm like, because my farm is in BFE, the middle of fucking nowhere. Who's going to
fair? I would come down there once a year. Yeah, okay, we'll find that weekend. Hey, when we get our battle barn going up here, finally, you'll have to come up and
drive up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Pretty typical. We always have to invite you assholes, but you never invite us to anything. So
I seem to recall inviting you all to dinner and having a great video of you all, dancing at the entrance to the.
Hey, I know the passcode now.
You know the passcode now. Exactly.
Yeah,
you're good.
I do too. So, my passcode that got me in was I want to spend money in the safe house.
Yeah, exactly. I want to spend money here. Don't make me
that door
dance.
Guy's pretty cool. So
he's funny. He's really fucking funny.
Good. All right, let's get out.
Anyway.
Exactly. Well, thanks, guys. And I'll just remind everyone out there to obviously like and subscribe to the podcast. And as Mike is so fond of hearing me say, keep climbing for advantage, you ugly bunch of monkeys.
There is no advantage.
This here. Bring Mike Rafferty back into the conversation. Mike rage quit. He was so mad.
Just had enough of it. Just like
exactly.
Well, you were saying something, Don. Maybe we could try to transition. But you're talking about some dickheads we ran into.
Yeah, at Chicago at the O'Hare Airport. Remember those guys?
God.
Yeah.